mother tongue. It's of course Cantonese, and this is the very first time I talk about Cantonese operas in English and China Fest. First of all, I would like to say thank you, Leo, thank you for the Hong Kong initiative, and also UBC to let me have the chance to come here to share some of my understandings of the Cantonese opera. I myself is a man of letters, you would say, or a learner of literature. But on the other hand, I also like to, because of my family, perhaps my parents are Cantonese opera lovers, so I have the chance, even when I'm small kid, then I also have the chance to watch, say, Flower Princess and also other operas. Okay, so today we have just seen a very famous act of this particular opera. This is one of the two acts that I like most. I'll mention a little bit about the acts just a while ago that you have seen. Of course, my major sort of focus will be on the last act, then I'll talk about it. And on the screen, you see that that's the very famous, Yang Ba, Yang Bing Fai Ba Shi Xin, the very famous actor and actress. Whether I should say actor, I don't know. I think people know about that. That actor, in fact, is a female one, right? And this makes a lot of interpretation nowadays when we talk about these pairs. So this Flower Princess 帝女花, 帝女花, and I will spend a little bit time to talk about the operas itself, but I will spend more of my time to talk about the influence, the implications of these particular operas. See how it, in a sense, that promote or give some kind of arouse some kind of cultural and political imaginations of Hong Kong. So, okay, so perhaps I let you see a bit of the last act. As I said, this is my main focus tonight. So let's see here. So that's the last act, and it's about a wedding. But at the same time, they will commit suicide, and then turn to be the funeral of these parents. So they bear the names of Hung Liu. Hung means fragrance. Usually we will refer to a lady, a beauty, for sacrifice. Well, it's about die early, right? So you'll see a lot of we call it the kind of acting, the kind of stylist movements. It's very famous. Especially this couple of wordings. quite close to the original. Because of the time concern, so I skipped it. So you'll see that these pairs actually is the same pair, supposed to be the same pairs that I've just seen. You know, the two performers have make a very good performance for us, right? The same pairs, so the male and the female. Then I'll talk about in a very simple way about the Hong Kong, the Cantonese operas in Hong Kong. Originally, we can trace back the histories of Hong Kong, the Cantonese operas up till traced to the 18th century, you know, so in the Qing dynasty. But later on, of course, it is have a very prosperous kind of prosperities, you know, in Guangdong, and especially in Guangzhou Canton, and also in Hong Kong and Macau. We understand that it is a subgenre of the traditional Chinese opera, but when it comes to Hong Kong, it's a little bit different from the very original kind of Chinese drama. It's also different from that of the after 50s, different from that of the mainland one. It's basically because you know, we all know that in the after 1949 in mainland China, there's very much important political reform, social reform, and it also happens on that of the Cantonese opera. So in mainland, it's said to be should be promote nationalism, and also in a way they try to elevate it into the status of high culture. But in Hong Kong, still it is a part of the commercial culture. It's very much related to the public, to the citizens, right? And also in Hong Kong, it's the public space allow it to have different sorts of experiments. It's bring in many other kind of influences, like the movie. Right? So you can see the script, the opera is very different from the very traditional kind of, say, for example, French. So in a sense that it takes many of the examples from Western movies, the kind of arrangement, the kind of you may say that the plot, and also aesthetically, the Hong Kong Cantonese opera also experiments a lot of different ways of we call it term hong, the tones, the sounds. So make it from 1950s onwards, you'll see that the Hong Kong Cantonese operas. In fact, people would say that it's a heyday of Cantonese opera. People would say that, well, it might be, because of the difference, it's better than those in the mainland. So there's a ways of looking at it. Right? And also, we'll see that, as I written here, the kind of features about Cantonese opera is the 唱做念打, the singing, the acting. The acting, as I just mentioned about, it is kind of 身段, the style is the movement, and also the recitation, and also the acrobatics. So these are the elements that we look at Cantonese opera. Okay, so what about the story of this Flower Princess? Actually, the Flower Princess has another name that called Princess Tang Ping. So is in history you can find the names about Tang Ping Gongzhu, Changping Gongju. For Changping Gongju, she was when this story happens, she was about 16 years old at the time that his father, the emperor, Songjing Huangdi, the Songjing Huangdi, chose a husband for the princess. So the husbands will be the Fuma, the royal son-in-law. The royal son-in-law is the male, the Zhao Saihi, Zhou Shixian. So it is sort of an arrangement by the parents, by the father, arranged this marriage for him. But the wedding was interrupted by the rebels, Li Zhicheng, and the rebels. They attacked the capital, the Beijing, and then so that the wedding cannot be carry on. And what the emperor did is to kill all his female family members, because they don't want he doesn't want the females, sort of corrupted by the rebels, so to kill them all. And he tried also to kill Changping, the princess, but when he stepped on Changping, it's only cut her left arm. Okay, so he thought Changping died, so that's why later on it can survive. The Changping survived, but Songjing commit suicide himself. So that's in history. After the Qing take over, the Qing dynasty take over, Changping survived, and then he wrote a letter to the Qing emperor asking the emperor to lift her to be a nun, to go to nunnery. But the Qing emperor didn't allow it, and ordered she to marry again with the Fuma, with the the royal son-in-law, so that he would like to do this kind of thing to make good, to let the people say that he paid respect to the former dynasty, but in fact he's doing something that against the will of the Changping. Then Changping, the flower princess, died 1 year later because she's so sad that she doesn't feel like good, and then she died. So that's in history. We can find it in the main Mengxi and the main history. Right? Okay, so this is the real things happens in history. Later on, in the about mid-Qing, someone called Huang Xieqing make it into a kunqu. So this is the very first version of opera, Chinese operas, about Di Nu Hua, about Dai Nui Fa, about this flower princess. But I won't spend time on this. I think it is. The Cantonese opera is much better than this one, I could say. Okay, so the Cantonese opera. We see the playwright. It's very famous in Hong Kong and also in Guangdong. This is Tang Disheng, Tang Disheng. Tang Disheng actually he come to Hong Kong in the time of Japanese Sino-Japanese War. He moved to Hong Kong, and he produced a lot of very good Cantonese opera. He has written about 400 of Cantonese operas. But of course, the most famous one happens in the 50s. So that's just a while ago I said that the 50s and 60s are the heydays of the Cantonese opera. Tang Disheng is one of the major important playwrights. And I have list several of very famous, other than the Princess Flower. Okay, there's about the immortal Zhang Yuqiu, 万世流芳張玉橋, and also the pioneer Pavilion surprise dreams of Mao Danting Game Mong, and also the legends of Purple Hairpin, Ji Cai Gei, and the butterflies and the rapiers, Deep Ying Hong Lei Gei, and the reincarnation of the red prompt, Joy Sai Hong. Okay, so all these are very famous, and many of the Cantonese or Hong Kong people can, sing a few phrases of at least it's about these Cantonese operas. And his Cantonese operas is famous for its literariness, and in his work, he often make reference to classical Chinese literature. And also his scripts are, that's of the grace and elegance in rhetoric and expression. So come back to our play, our Cantonese opera, that the Flower Princess. It's the first performance of it in 1957. There are altogether 7 acts. The first act is about the marriage. As I said, in history, the marriage, the sort of a wedding, the choice of the husband is arranged by the father, by the emperor. But Tang Disheng, our playwright, change it into that the princess choose herself. She choose this Fu Ma. Zhao Saiyin, Zhou Shixian. So it's being selected rather than arranged. The second act, talking about the Li Zicheng, the rebels, come in, attack the capital, and the fall of the capital, and then the main emperors kill the female members and himself. Okay. The third act is about because it's turned to be the new dynasty, the Qing dynasty, and then. The princess survives after 5 days of being stabbed, the left hand still survives, and he finds shelters in a nunnery. So that's we can see the nuns. So the next act is what you have just seen. The Ngam Yu is a very famous one. The next one. Okay, the seeking the corpse is the third act. And then the fourth act is the Ngam Yu, as we have just seen. The princess tried to deny, to cover up. He tried to deny his identity, but the Fu Ma, the royal son-in-law, tried to make with his love. Finally, the Fu Ma, let the princess being moved, and with his stubborn love. So you have just seen the act. And then the next act is the Fu Ma, the royal son-in-law. He has a plan, make up a plan to press their demands to the Qing emperor. Okay. And then the sixth act is the petition, is meet the emperor in the court and make their demands with sort of a debate, and also to show the couples kind of word powers, and then finally the emperor agree all their wishes. The last act is the scene you have just seen in the movie. There's the last act, the fragrance sacrifice. That's very important act of this opera. So the couples die for love, and also die in honors of the last dynasty. So it is a way of they commit suicide not because themselves only. So also they try to pay respect to the last dynasty. Okay, the main. Okay. So for Tang Disheng, for Tang's The Flower Princess, we will see these kind of features. I try to make it brief, right? So it is, we can see that it is talking about love, this couple, but this love is not only the private one, it has a lot of public significance, because as you can see. They are male and female, and they love each other, so it's private things. But because they are the princess is all related with the dynasty, with the kingdom, and so this is a sort of the private-public kind of coming together. And it also is a celebration of individual agencies and freedom, as I said. Tang Disheng make it different from the original story, in history that is all arranged, and they don't, they just commit, they just follow the instruction of the Qing of the main emperor, and later the Qing emperor. But in Tang Disheng's Cantonese opera, you can see it's quite different because the princess find her husband herself, and then when the Qing emperor asks them to do this kind of a wedding, they will based on it they have their demand. The demand is to try to revitalize the sort of respect about the main emperors, because the main emperors is not buried. So one of their demand is that we have official funerals about the last emperor of the Ming. And also, they have to release the prince, the son of the last emperor, to let them, to go to Nanjing. So they make this kind of request. They are not just follow the emperor. And after they succeed, they commit suicide. They refuse to be the normal citizens of the Qing dynasty. So that make it, a very complicated sort of expressions. It's about private and public, and also you can see that they sort of are celebrating individual freedom and these kind of things. And on the same time, they also try to in the opera, Tang Disheng tried to pinpoint some of the hypocrisy of the authority. Say, for example, in Tang Disheng's script, there's some kind of criticisms about why the main emperor killed all the daughters. Why? Why should he? So this kind of a questioning, this kind of criticism is really quite modern kind of ideas. And also he tried to make the Qing emperors look hypocritic. All these gestures are uncovered, saying that see how selfish or how what the Qing emperor is doing is basically is not for the goods of the people, but it only is kind of a gestures. Okay, so this is the Tang Disheng's scriptures in a sense that it is in a way that it is sort of modern and bring in new ideas and not following the very traditional kind of thoughts. Okay. And the other part I would like to talk about is the lyricism you can find within the Flower Princess. As I said, I also did some work on the lyrical traditions of the Chinese literature or Chinese culture. And in fact, we can find in the Flower Princess this sort of lyricism. We talk about the voice of the heart, how internally what we feel and what we feel inside, how to communicate dialogues with the outer world. So we can see from the Flower Princess, we can see that like the speech of talking about speech is the voice of the heart. That is the word thing from Tang Disheng's scripts, so 言語發自心經. And also he places much importance about the words, things of words, because words carries what's inside our mind, and then it also expressed to the world. So this is the ways of, as I said, that which is very emphasized in the Chinese literature, Chinese culture. So the next part, I would like to talk about why these stories to evolved, come into a part of the modern consciousness. Actually, it's in the 1940s, we have already seen the things talking about the late Ming's histories, like Kwok Kou has written the very famous papers on the 甲申300年制 这个甲申300年代 and because of that, and there's lots of discussions about why Ming Dynasty, declined, why the fall of the Ming, what's the reason of the fall of the Ming Dynasty. So this kind of discussion actually is related to the national government at that time, the Kuomintang. People are also talking about it as because the Kwok is come from the leftist, right? The leftist camp. So what they're talking about is that, what the Li Zhicheng, the rebels, is it comparable to the communism, the Communist Party, and what's the reason why the national government, cannot survive? Is it similar to that of the Ming Dynasty? So these kind of discussions, come across in the 1940s, and also there's a drama. There's a very attractive sort of a drama that is a 甲申记. Basically, it's also turned into literature. So, well, that's in the 40s. In 1957, so we have our Cantonese opera, The Flower Princess, put into performance, right? So it happens in the Lee Theatre. So people in Hong Kong, if in Hong Kong knows about Lee Theatre, right? It's very famous place for drama, for Chinese opera, etc. So it's full house for 14 days. And then there's a lot of review about the reception at that period of time. The newspaper say some of the quotes here talking about is sort of a revolution in the art of Cantonese opera. And also they praise a lot about the literary excellence about this opera. So they don't take it as only as the entertainment. They will read it, from the literary point of view, saying that, well, it's literary, in literature, we can see the excellence of it, right? And the other part, of course, is the very famous protagonist, the Yang Kim-fai and Park Shih-sin, this, as I said, actor, in quotation mark, and actress, right? So Yang Kim-fai and Park Shih-sin, so, really good, really great in doing this Cantonese opera. But there's also some political criticism, saying that, well, it is incorrect representation about the late Ming history because Li Zhicheng, the rebels, shouldn't be looked down at. This, of course, is the communist sort of ideology, thing that the rebels, are people's revolution. So there's also this kind of criticisms about this particular Cantonese opera. But as I said, I will also look at how this Cantonese opera make impacts in the later generation. So we'll see a couple of it, right? This Cantonese classic have sort of a popularization in the way that it has countless adaptations. As we just seen, there's another one, another performance of this particular drama, particular Cantonese opera. And it also remains into film. What you have just seen is the 1959 version, but there's another version, very famous version by John Woo that you know about, because John Woo is also very famous because later on you go to Hollywood, right? John Woo also made a very, we can say that a very good film of this Princess Changping, of the Flower Princess. In 1976, that's a version of it. But the other 男装帝女番, in English it is once a princess, always a princess. But the Chinese are a little bit different, right? It's a male princess, flower. So it's a little bit different. But in a way, this is make use of this flower princess to try to have some kind of a social criticism, especially from the gender perspective, because we know that the playwright here, Edward Lam Yik-hua, is a gay. He tried to make use of this the flower princess to criticize the social sort of eyes, how people look at gay and lesbian. Okay, but why they choose Dai Nui Fa? Actually, it might be because of Yang Yim-fai and Ba Xuexin. These pairs, they are all females, but they have their love affairs. So this is a clue that Lam Yik-hua make use of to have this her different new adaptations of the Flower Princess. And then now, we can see that because it is so popular, then there's a different kind of adaptation of it. So make fun of it, or sort of a mockeries of it. So I would like you to hear. Is it here? Okay, yeah. Okay.
落街冇錢買麵包，靠些我又怕被人鬧，途經似隻愛貓，了別今晚得梗摘炮，皆因肚好飢餓，我裏邊得似係戰鼓敲，最衰平日結交埋，一班損友任性嘅來胡鬧，阿爹勸極。
That's it. Yeah. So you can see that the use of the colloquial and witty languages here, right? So originally it's sort of a courtly love, right? But here it's talking about, I have no money to buy the bread. So you can see that how common people, have this kind of understanding, or is very familiar with this Dai Nui Fa, this Cantonese opera. So this we can see that what's that? The da 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 da. So it's very famous. Always happen. Well, perhaps I skip this. I go to this one. Okay, I try to go to the next one and see. Do you know about this? Because this is the up down again, right? So la so mi la so la so mi la, so always happen. Right? So we'll try the other one. Okay. Is that? Oops. Can't find it. Is it somewhere here? Here. Okay. Okay. This is the Gangnam Style. So it's performed by Jim Chim. This so-called the Gangnam Style Chinese diva. It's a scornful remarks on the materialistic and lustful natures of the modern romantic relationships. So it's reenacting this stereotyping kind of expressions of men and women. So it's quite interesting. That's I would say that is the popular sort of adaptation in the popular culture. But more than that, much more than that, we can see in the next one. Perhaps we can, see a very serious one. Okay. Oh. This is a very different. It's composed by Wat Manzhong. It's a very famous Chinese composer. This instrumental elaboration. Da, 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 da. Wat Manzhong only came to Hong Kong in the 1970s, and he made this, composed this called the Princess Changping's Fantasy Overture in 1975. Well, that's the ways of this so-called popular culture now is going into the high art, with this kind of adaptation, and we see another adaptations of it, musical elaborations of it. The other ways of it. It's more light-hearted, kind of bossa nova, that loosen out the musical phases of the song. So that's the, how it's elevated to high art, right? Now I turn to another phase of it, right? So that's the public phase of this very traditional Cantonese drama. I don't know whether you recognize that. One is Leslie Zhang Bo, and the other is Wang Yingxu. These are one. They sing. Leslie Zhang is so, charming. Whenever he sings, people always applause. Too bad that we save all the applause, all the the praise to Zhang Kwok and to Leslie. But okay, let's see the other one, right? So that's another, I think, is a much more important event, happens in Hong Kong, in China, in the world. It's the year of 1989, and we all know about this, right? There's student movements in Tiananmen Square, and then what happens in mainland? There's something happen simultaneously in Hong Kong. It is the time that Hong Kong citizens have their wholehearted, to come with the mainland, and they are looking forward for the democracy. So in Hong Kong, in the year of 1989, it's in the May. There's a marathon, music marathons. It ran for 12 hours, televised, and all the representatives, from the different sectors of the art industry come to give their support of the student, right? And even the Cantonese opera representatives, they come here and they express their support. So let's see how some of the words that they talk about. Yun Xiaofei, Long Kim Sang, the second generations of the young man back. So they're trying to.
好多人都係話我哋粵劇界咧好保守，或者出聲得好遲。
They say that
但係
Cantonese.
始終咧，我哋粵劇界都係企咗出嚟啦。
So they
亦都
stand
咧
up.
同大家講一句，我哋唔係唔熱心呢件事，只不過大部分人比較保守啲，請大家原諒一下。好啦，而家我哋要唱一支歌咧，呢首歌雖然咧就唔係話歌詞裏邊係有咩特別嘅意思，不過我哋好希望係大家一齊唱嘅。 相信一唱嘅時候咧，好多人就算我諗好多唔識廣東話嘅都會識唱。
For those even doesn't know Cantonese would know about this song in Hong Kong.
唔使話咩歌嘅。
We don't need to tell you about the title of the songs. So you know it.
係咪呢啲咪你？
Original word is 下去. That means leave us alone. Leave us alone. But now he make it carry on.
希望識嘅一齊唱。
Again, the same tone. It's talking about a country. The country is in crisis. So with the country as an inseparable extension of one's own identity, existence. Is Jackie Chan singing? He also support democracy. Can you believe it? Okay, so let's move the other one. It's also very interesting one. It's talking about 1997. Okay, this one. So you know about 1997. Is Hong Kong. Return to China. The hangover of Hong Kong to China, or the return to the motherland, right? With 回歸. Okay, because of that, we need some sort of a celebration. So there's a celebration, sort of a composition, offered by Tan Canton, very famous, right, composer. So he made this composer symphony, Symphony 1997, which is, in a way to celebrate the return of Hong Kong to China. But interesting enough that within this symphony, you will see the part about Dai Nui Fa, the fragrance sacrifice. Okay, so let's see the part. Very sort of a grand, represent the power of the motherland, the China, right? And then you see the Hu, Yi Wu, very different kind of a world, two different world, right? And then you see, again, it happens. And see the background, also different sorts of, you would say noise or music. Again, right? Mi la sol la sol mi la. It's a recording of Temple Street performance. People come to Hong Kong knows about Temple Street, right? It's very grassroots kind of a arena. The people performs there, usually for the grassroots people. So, on one hand, you see this kind of music, this of the citizens in Hong Kong, and the other, you see the cello. It's quite, in the sense of oddward, right? Quite oddward with these kind of two things, could juxtapose in the same moment, right? This kind of a randomness of the truncated of sounds. So is it celebrating? Is it celebrating Hong Kong? Return to China, right? You see again, very grand court-like music and the grassroots things, performed in the temple streets in Hong Kong. And finally fade out, right? So that's a way of looking at, Dai Nui Fa, the princess, the flower princess, right? So we can say that this kind of a lyricism is we see the politics of lyricism, right? And then see another versions about this so-called politics of lyricism. There's a performance by Its History and Yipo singers. Its History, if you play mahjong, so what Its History is, right? But Its History, okay, it sings with sort of how do you call it? It's a cappella choral music, right? The theater. There's a cappella choral theater company called Its History, right? To promote popular art. Right? And they have the kind of missions of promoting the interactions of music and theater. And we'll see the trailers of it, only the trailers. But the trailers, I think, is very telling. So that's why I bring it here. The tailor of this Its History. Talking about the life before, I should say, the Qin Sai. What we have done, turned into what kind of things? is a requiem for Hong Kong. So using the two words, Hung Yield, the sacrifice, the fragrance sacrifice. It's a trailer. I understand that this is the trailers for the 2016 performance. I understand that there will be another performance in April this year. So if you have chance to go to Hong Kong, then perhaps try to look for it. Yeah, it will perform in the Kwai Ching Cat Yuan. So it's make use of the Hung Yield, the fragrance sacrifice. The word, as I said, Hung sometimes means beauty, but of course it means Hong Kong, right? So when Yield means die early, well, is Hong Kong dying? Okay. So I'm a learner of literature, of course. I would like to end my lecture with this poem. This poem is written by a young poet, Liu Weitang. It's in Chinese, but I asked one of my colleagues to make quite a literal translation in English here. You can have a sense of it, and then I'll come back to the Chinese one. Right? So it's again use the same title, Hung Yield, the fragrance sacrifice, or the beauty, the early death of the beauty. Right? And then at the end of it, you can see the note by the author saying that for Hong Kong. So this Hung is very, it is Hong Kong, it's nothing else, right? So he wrote this poem, to express his understanding of the situations of Hong Kong, at least in the year 2016. So in the first line of this poem, I changed it, to make it into in the beginning. In the beginning, right? In the beginning is word. We all know about this kind of, biblical kind of sayings, right? In the beginning, the sea is still, and the last stanza, so at the end, the sea is still, right? So you can see this kind of, correspondence. So in the beginning and at the end. So at the end, I look at the last one. At the end, the ripples arise from the sinking of the islands are like the iron ring in the hands of the boys in the street. So how it ends, right? So I let you see the Chinese one, and then I would like to recite it in Cantonese for you. 向腰序曲，起先珠海沉靜，黎民與萬物。像匿藏在蒸魚下的群星，死去的僅僅是前朝駙馬，他翻煎我們眼珠裏未盡的鹽。公主在麗景，一間醫院暮色慘烈，圍着他的圓裙醉倒的病人們，地老天荒。就在這一切不堪下去之前，在夜虛嘆着薄扶林一首小詩的狼瘡，如果詩人活着，也會沿街書寫家譜吧。不過不用黑墨，用敲啄其樹的火，最終珠海沉寂，群島淹沒後的漣漪，有頑童檢拾如鐵環。So you see, that's a poem. I like it very much. It's talking about Hong Kong because you can see Bo Fu Lam and also Lai Ging. Lai Ging is in the western part of Kowloon, or people originally is part of the New Territories, the western part. It's supposed a place that of the, as I said, the poor, the grassroots people, right? And then you see the princess. Perhaps we'll go back to the what? How can I make it to the last one? One more. Okay, perhaps the English one you can see it better, right? So when you talk about the princess is in Lai Ging, what does it mean? Because in Lai Ging, as I said, the West Kowloon, there's a hospital bear the names of the Princess Margaret, Margaret Guanju. So it's a princess from the United Kingdom. So he tried to allude this English princess to that of the flower princess, right? The flower princess from high and above, right? But how it turns to be, have their impacts on the Hong Kong, right? So this Prince Margaret bear the name is the names of the hospital, and this hospital is for the poor, right? So the poor people, where their their patients gamble around her guns forever and ever. So what does it mean? This kind of juxtaposition. Okay, and then you will see that before it goes downhill. Of course, it's a metaphor. It's going downhill. What's going downhill? Hong Kong is a hilly place, right? In Hong Kong Island, you can always say like the mid-level, the Bo Fu Lam is the mid-level. Mid-level usually, for the inhabitants are the middle or middle upper class, right? So from Bo Fu Lam, when you go downhill, you will see you're coming to the grassroots, coming to see the common people, the poor, right? So we can see, this kind of, metaphorical kind of saying, what the highest part, like the princess and the poor, and Hong Kong, what Hong Kong will be. Of course, when this second last stanza, talking about a poet is alive, then he'll write a poem, right? This poet also is quite ambiguous, in the sense that we know that Bo Fu Lam is a place for many writers. There's a group of writers like Dai Wang Su, like Ye Lingfeng. They all have been living in Bo Fu Lam, and they all write poems. But later on, in the second line, you'll see that write the bloodlines along the street, not with the blacking, will remember the Kowloon king, Kowloon Wong Dai. You know about these stories? There's someone claimed that he's a king of Kowloon. And then all the places are his. So he writes on every public, awards or any sports that he tried to claim that this is my land. So this is quite an interesting thing. It's a real thing. But on the other hand, what's the ownership of Hong Kong? Who's the owner of Hong Kong? Who owns Hong Kong, right? So finally, you'll see the last stanza saying that the end, the sea is still, and the island is already sinks. The sinking of the islands. Well, what does it mean? And this sinking comes up with ripples. So how these ripples? How do we treat these ripples? Will it be turned to be the sort of heritage? Will it be from the next world, the new world? Then it's going to be an iron ring. If you note about the poems of Hoi Ji, you see this metaphor, right? So the ripples turn to be an iron ring. And the Hong Kong is gone. Hong Kong is dead. Hong Kong is no longer there. So it's only the sort of debris in the ground, and then someone will pick it up and doesn't know about it. So in Hong Kong, we don't have our memory. We don't have our history. We'll forget Hong Kong. If Hong Kong is no longer here, so no longer exists. So will it be the kind of understanding of Hong Kong situation now, or is it some kind of you may say, I don't think it's an optimistic kind of reading of the Hong Kong situation. So, well, I end my talk here because it's literature. So, sorry that I think I'm a little bit over time, but I hope at least I can share with you some of my readings of this Cantonese opera. So, thank you very much.